Thank you.
Welcome everybody to the last meeting of South Oxfordshire District Council's Cabinet Committee. My name is Maggie Over. I'm the new leader of SODC and also I chair this committee. We have some housekeeping. We're not expecting any alarms and hopefully everybody by now knows where the exit is. So in the event of the alarm going off, please make your way to the nearest exit. We have quite a long agenda this evening, so I'll jump straight into it if that's okay. Starting with agenda item 1, and that is Chair's announcements. Just really would like to welcome back the returning cabinet members, and we have some new and also sort of returning additions in Sue Cooper and Mike Giles, who's not with us today. But thank you very much, everybody, for your hard work to date, and of course for the work which inevitably you will get stuck into over the coming months. Moving on then to agenda item 3, I will really rush through these. I don't think we have minutes for to sign off today, Becky.
No, if you're happy to take them at the next meeting, I believe it's on 29th of January, if that's okay with everyone.
Yes, no problem at all. We have had quite a condensed cabinet programme recently, so it's totally understandable. So going to agenda item 4, declarations of interest. This item is to receive declaration of disclosable pecuniary interest, other registrable interest and non-registrable interest, or any conflict of interest in respect of any items on the agenda this meeting. I would declare that I am the ward member for Goring, and we have an item which relates to Goring, so I will do that at this stage, Becky.
Yeah, thank you.
Likewise, I'm the board member for Preston Cromarsh, and I really don't have any interest in other than being ward member.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. If you suddenly realise that you're working for a company selling waste vehicles, let us know in due course. Nick, some advice around car parking permits. We are discussing this. I don't know if anybody is a car parking permit holder. Nope. No, so we're good then. But would we normally have to declare that out of interest?
No, Chair, just for the minutes, the declarations you both made there about your own roles in other organisations don't seem to me to cross even the level for an other interest, as it's not lobbied. So just to get that out of the way, that's absolutely fine, and that can now be a matter of record that you've received direct advice on it from me. The car parking interest point. An interest is only something that affects a councillor more than the widest public, and so I don't see there being a problem here either. I'd be amazed if your position was going to be influenced by the very reasonable price of our local parking permits. So there's no problem there. You can all continue to debate, even if you do have a parking permit.
Thank you very much. It's a quote from our monitoring officer. Thank you. So in that case, I will go to agenda item 5, which is urgent business. I have none. Becky?
Nothing to raise. Just also we have received apologies from Councillor Peter Barker and
Oh, did I skip the
Mike Giles.
Did I skip the agenda item? When was that? Hang on. Urgent business, declaration of interest. Oh, apologies. It was number 2. I beg your pardon. Yes. Go ahead, Becky. Do you want to take a roll call as well?
Yeah, I'm happy to do a roll call. So I'll do it in alphabetical order if members can please confirm if they're present in the meeting room. So Councillor Sue Cooper.
Present in the room.
Thank you. Councillor Maggie Philipova-Rivers.
Present in the room.
Thank you. Councillor Georgina Heritage.
Present in the room.
Thank you so much. Councillor Lee Rawlins.
Present in the room.
Thank you. Councillor Anne-Marie Simpson.
Present in the room.
Thank you. And Councillor Tony Morgan.
Present in the room.
Thank you. We've got the 2 apologies.
2 apologies. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Apologies for that. Right. So we are now on agenda item 6, public participation. Do we have any registered speakers for today?
Yes, so we have 2 registered speakers who are joining us online. So they should get up to 3 minutes to speak each. So I think first up is Councillor Ian Snowden.
Thank you very much. Councillor Snowden, welcome. Thank you for being with us. The floor is yours. You have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah,
just rushed in, so I'll try and calm down. Chair, I want to start by saying something really clearly, because I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. This was never about blocking waste vehicles, delaying collections, or pretending the current fleet can limp on forever. This is about how the decision was made and whether the cabinet members were actually given enough information to make a proper informed call on the £2 million spend. Because when it came to scrutiny, what became obvious to members from across all parties and both councils was that we weren't. At scrutiny, we weren't asking for perfection. We weren't asking officers to predict the future of vehicle technology. We were asking for basics you'd expect when signing off one of the biggest capital decisions of the year. And those basics just weren't there. No fleet condition summary for members, no modelling to show why electric vehicles were ruled out, no whole life cost or carbon comparison, no clear breakdown of what alternatives were considered and why they were rejected, and no real discussion of leasing, even though we're heading straight towards local government reorganisation. What members were effectively told was, the evidence exists, trust us. And that's just not good enough for scrutiny, not good enough for cabinet, and certainly not good enough for the residents. What's particularly telling is that the amended report now openly acknowledges that there is a lot of information that wasn't provided in the original decision. That's not me saying that, that's the report. Scrutiny did exactly what it's supposed to do here. It wasn't political. It wasn't about stopping vehicles being bought. It was about asking whether the council was being asked. It was asking whether the council was being asked to commit millions of pounds and lock itself into diesel vehicles potentially until 2030 without seeing the full picture. And I think the answer to that was clearly yes. I'm also uncomfortable with the way climate impacts have been handled. Waste collection is our biggest source of operational emissions. If there's one area where you expect proper carbon and life cycle analysis to be carried out, it's this one. But instead, we were told that doing that work would be inefficient use of time. Residents are being asked to change behaviour, cut waste, reduce emissions, and rightly so. But we can't then turn around and say that properly comparing cleaner alternatives for the multi-million-pound purchases is somehow optional. On alternatives, electric vehicles are dismissed largely on assumed range issues, but without showing members the route modelling behind that. Hydrogen is discounted without any serious exploration of partnerships and offsite options. Leasing is rejected because of assumptions from the strategy agreed by several key things. Again, this isn't about saying these options are definitely right. It's about whether cabinet members were given enough information to be confident they were wrong. The scrutiny meeting showed cabinet members hadn't asked enough questions and therefore didn't have the answers for us on the night. And that's the gap scrutiny identified. So tonight, for me, this isn't just about whether cabinet agrees with the recommendation in front of it. It's about whether cabinet accepts that the original process fell short and whether it's willing to commit to doing better next time, because scrutiny didn't say don't buy the vehicles. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Snowden. That was very, very thorough. Thank you very much. We really do welcome your comments here. What we'll do is we'll go to Councillor Rob, and then we will ask some questions of clarification, and we will try and attempt to answer some of the questions you have raised as part of debate. I hope that's okay. And the good news is that the way that the agenda is ordered, it's going to be one of the first items that we discuss. I hope that's okay with you. Councillor Rob, welcome to you as well. The floor is yours. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody in the Cabinet, and thank you to the officers led by Paul Fielding for this very detailed report that's been provided following the joint scrutiny call-in meeting. I really do appreciate the level of work and detail that's gone into this new report, but it's nonetheless disappointing to see an amended report come to Cabinet only a day before tonight's meeting. And I guess the impression one gets from reading the report and from looking back at the report that came to joint scrutiny is very much that it's too late to change anything. It's for Cabinet to ask questions, it's for Cabinet to challenge officers, to stay on top of the issues and to request more information. But we seem to, again, be in a situation where a course of action is inevitable or unavoidable, and the decision is then backfilled with evidence to legitimise it after the fact. Just to be clear, as Councillor Snowden just pointed out, nobody is disputing the necessity of replacing the ageing waste vehicle fleet, and nobody is disputing that we have a statutory duty, not to mention a political imperative, to ensure that the bins are collected on time. But there does seem to be an ongoing problem with allowing sufficient time for proper decision making. The report goes through some key concerns raised by joint scrutiny. Budget is one of them. We were told about the significant cost implications of shifting even part of the fleet to electric vehicles. But whether this shift happens today or in 18 months' time, the cost implications will presumably be the same. The report states if the specification of the vehicles was to be changed, this would result in increased capital cost and capital budgets for each council would need to be increased. Please, can Cabinet commit to embedding sufficient flexibility in the budget to enable at least a partial switch to EV waste vehicles in the future if this is appropriate? And would Cabinet recognise and acknowledge that they should have done this already? Lead times. We are told in the report that lead times to acquire EV waste vehicles are approximately 18 months, compared with 9 to 12 months for diesel vehicles. But why wasn't Cabinet on top of this? Why didn't they think about this some time ago when we could have still had a choice between EVs and the diesel vehicles? We've also been given a text of an email from OpTrack sent on 8th of December 25, about a month after the joint scrutiny meeting, which states that whilst the challenges of rural routing are not insurmountable for electric vehicles, the practicalities of managing these
30
vehicles
seconds.
require an operational shift, and we might struggle to deploy this in the near term. Again, why wasn't decision making started earlier in order to enable the necessary operational shift? I would ask Cabinet and the Cabinet member to commit to properly evaluating the options in time for the next procurement of waste vehicles so that we're not once again painted into a corner and left with no options but the status quo because of lack of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robb. Again, very, very thorough there, and on time. Do we have, as Cabinet, don't disappear. Do we have any questions of clarification for Councillor Robb or Councillor Snowden?
No, they're very clear.
No, very clear. Thank you very much. We will now go to the next agenda item. Do hang around for the debate if you're minded to. We've got a recommendation and updates from other committees. Becky, would you like to take us through those?
Yes, of course. So Candida has pulled together a summary from the joint scrutiny meeting held on 13th of November to show some of the discussion that led up to the decision that was eventually made. So it was resolved that the decision be referred back to Cabinet for consideration, and they gave their reasoning as well, which is listed in the report. So are you happy to take this with the following item?
Yes, they're also listed in the report. So I'm very happy to do that. So we are on to agenda item 8, weekly purchase of waste vehicle. As a lot of you are aware, this is for the benefit of the public as well, that this agenda item was added as a result of joint scrutiny calling in the individual Cabinet member decision to discuss and follow, and it was agreed at joint scrutiny committee to ask Cabinet to look at this again, and this report and the appendix is produced as a result. We have a new Cabinet member, or rather she is returning to Cabinet in Councillor Sue Cooper, who will introduce the report.
Thank you. Right, I'll start with apologies from me that we've had to do this. You will realise that I've been back in post for less than a week, but actually, no, it is a week, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And we will try and do better in future, I think is all I can say at this stage. The point we need to bring out, and everybody realises, that waste and recycling collection is a statutory service and we must provide it. At the moment, it's high profile, fairly well respected and successful service, and not one to us to put at risk. We've had reasonably good compliments on our service and we want to keep it that way. We're providing the contractor with vehicles to provide that service, and the strategy has been there to purchase them. This strategy was agreed. In fact, I was looking through things and I came across this great watch of rethinking waste resources. I don't know why I've got such things shutting up my house, but and so we did go through in great detail and the methodology for ordering new vehicles. So it's not totally without background. But the strategy does consider service maintenance, the cost and ability to complete the task, and then the lowest cabinet option, the lowest carbon option. To put carbon as the first and only consideration would be severely risky for us, and it also would exceed the agreed budgets, but I take the point that's been made about budgets. So the proposal is for 9 new refuse vehicles with internal combustion engines. This could be operated on diesel or, subject to further agreement, hydro-treated vegetable oil, and we shall investigate that. It was called in by joint scrutiny, and as I say, we thank them for the recommendations to consider. The issue of lack of information has hopefully been addressed in the thorough report that you've now got and its appendix. The reason for this recommendation takes account of the new depot location, its infrastructure, the cost of purchase, and the range and reliability of vehicles. And you will realise, in some sort of excuse, if you like, that the timetable for the new depot has not been terribly clear, as is often the case with these sorts of things. And in fact, I'm not able to commit to when we shall have it actually in place, and with it, hopefully, some more capacity to charge electric vehicles should we have them. So that's an excuse, but it's something that's very important to what we're doing going forward. We recognise that some won't like or agree with the decision, but our role is to balance the needs of all the corporate priorities and our statutory duties to residents. And the report outlines why the proposed option is the best at this time, and I think you probably agree that now. A future decision may have a different set of options to consider, and we'll have an update during next year. I must say that Maggie and I were discussing this the other day, and we looked at some of the distances involved, and if you take into account the distance that the vehicles will have to travel to get to, well, we looked at the 7 main towns in the area, and for some of them, especially something like Farringdon, you're going to consume most of its available mileage on an EV vehicle just to get there, not to even do the collection. So don't hold out too many hopes for the future. I mean, where we can hold out hopes, and one good thing, we've got 2 small good steps as regards carbon reduction. One is that we already have an EV vehicle for food waste, and I understand that an ICMD is likely to be coming my way for another one of those. So, you know, I say small step in the right direction. And the other thing is that I've been assured, and could be corrected, that the new internal combustion engine vehicles will be much more efficient than the ones that they're replacing. So again, hopefully an improvement. And I'd just say finally that I would strongly suspect that most members get far more complaints about non-collection, especially of things like textiles and waste electrical goods, than they do on not having electric vehicles collecting them. And the main reason for this is that the current fleet is not terribly reliable, and so they often have to get in hired vehicles which don't come with the cages that we have on our own vehicles for collecting these extra things, which is what makes our collection system so good compared with the rest of the country. But it does come at a cost if we haven't got the vehicles to collect it. So I fully endorse the recommendation that
let's come to that at the
you're
end.
going on to the end. Okay, right. I propose the recommendation then.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sukuba. We're really grateful to have you with us. Online, we've got Paul Fielding, who is the Head of Service for Housing and Environment, and Suzanne Malcolm, who is Deputy Chief Exec of Place. At this moment, I would like to invite either of you, if you have anything to add to what Sue has shared, anything further. Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you to Cabinet, and thank you to the members of the committee as well. I think the issue that was raised by Councillor Snowden, particularly regarding the lack of information in the ICMD, is definitely something that we've reflected on. and hopefully we've provided more information within this report, and we'll recognise that when we bring further future reports for purchasing future vehicles, which we almost certainly will need to do next year, that we will be undertaking similar levels of research and information. So hopefully we can provide that reassurance. I think everything else has either been covered well by Councillor Cooper or is within the report.
Thank you, Paul. Anything from Suzanne?
No, nothing to add. Thanks.
Nothing to add. Thank you very much. So we are into questions now, and we'll hear whether you have any questions for Sue Cooper or indeed our officers, and then I'll ask for a seconder. So have a think about whether you want a second. But on to questions. Does anybody have any?
I think we have a very detailed report now, so most of the questions should have been answered.
Should have been
I
answered.
think that's the case. Yeah.
Okay. I have a question for Paul, just a clarification, if that's okay. I know I don't want to predetermine any kind of decision going forward, but in terms of the EV food vehicle, are we looking at a single or are we looking at two EV food vehicles?
Not one.
Thank you, Chair. We already own one. We need to purchase two more, and the ICMD, which is about to come forward, will hopefully be proposing that both of those will be EV, but that's yet to come forward. But that's what it's looking like at the moment.
Thank you very much, Paul. Yes, so it's a couple. That's my understanding as well. Right. So before we go into debate, do we have a seconder for this? Okay, I'll go with Councillor Rowlands. Would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right.
You'll reserve your right. Very well. Do we have any comments? Does anybody want to speak? I'll go with Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank officers for this actual addendum that's been provided. I think it's really interesting and really informative. I'm quite confident that I think members sometimes forget what we have covered and addressed because this has been quite a long process. You mentioned the strategy from a while back. There was obviously quite a lot of work going in there. So I personally don't feel that there's anything wrong with the process, and I don't think the decision will be different. So I'm quite happy to support the recommendation here.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, I would also like to support the recommendation. I mean, clearly collecting the waste is a statutory duty, and as both the challenges from members of joint scrutiny have said, they recognise that that's something we must do, and they're not questioning that at all. The questions have come regarding some of the information now that's been provided, and I think we recognise maybe that should have come in earlier, and that's a reasonable point there. One of the council priorities is about financial stability, and this decision enables us to embed that particular decision. None of the council priorities exist in isolation. They will have to be looked together, and every decision we make is a balance of those priorities. Clearly, if there is a future requirement to look at providing additional money on a future case for providing a different sort of vehicle, then we would have to identify what would have to be cut to make that happen. And I'd be interested with written scrutiny at a later date where they might recommend which parts of current expenditure might be cut in order to provide for this if that's required. On the recommendations in the report, point C1 about learning from others for future tranches is a very well made point, and clearly Cabinet and officers will take note of that and will seek out knowledge in future from peer groups about helping to take that forward. And point C2 about future budgets, the point I made is about, if there is significant additional expenditure associated, then we'll have to take a decision about do we cut something out in order to make that decision. Overall, the information provided satisfies me. It's the right thing to do. It's a nuanced decision, as these things always are, but it's the right decision, and I support it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Heritage.
I'll just add, because I think most comments have been made very sufficiently and very well by the councillors. But I genuinely believe we have balanced our priorities. I, like all of us, would like to go down the EV route, and I look forward to exploring other options in future in the longer term. And my issues were never so much cost or budget based, although I realise that's very important, but it was about the suitability at this time. But I fully appreciate why scrutiny has asked for more information. I genuinely hope that they're satisfied with the resulting reports, and I absolutely take on board their valuable points. So I'd just like to say thanks to scrutiny for asking that we represent this on this occasion, and obviously, but thank you to officers as well for the huge amount of work they put into this.
Thank you, Councillor Heritage. I will have a go next as well, and then I will go to the second and to Sue Cooper to sum up. So, look, one of the things that is probably really clear to absolutely everyone, both on this call, if anybody is watching, but certainly for this cabinet, is that we have this inherent tension between our legal responsibility to provide statutory service and our commitment, and it is a genuine commitment to decarbonising the council operationally. And it is our job to recognise that that tension does exist, and sometimes what that means is having to manage risk and make decisions, honestly and as responsibly as we can. And I have a lot of sympathy for what the points raised by scrutiny, and indeed in terms of the information that we now have in order to make an informed decision responsibly. So the key challenge for me, so if you take some of the points raised within the appendix in terms of cost, in terms of budget, in terms of routing, etc. I think the problem, and with the timing of it all, is the fact that at the point in time at which the ICMP came forward, there were just so many unknowns. So we may have been able to kind of solve one of them and remedy one of them, but it is just a combination of so many different ones. And some of these unknowns were created because of two things. One of them was the procurement in the contract. I mean, personally, I would have liked to be in a position to talk to our contractors, to be able to understand routing, to be able to understand their needs. And it's just something that was not possible to do whilst we were going through this kind of complex procurement and indeed maybe negotiation process. So that became really difficult. And of course, the move from the old depot and which we haven't undertaken yet, and the new one, but that whole process as well threw up quite a lot of unknowns in terms of charging capacity, in terms of distance and the kind of requirements we would have in terms of range or duty cycle, as I think it is called. We are not, all of us are now waste vehicle experts, I am sure, by conversations with officers or indeed doing kind of research of our own. So duty cycle, I think is what we call it, isn't it? So with all of these taken together, I think it's become really difficult to ask officers to undertake a very, very in-depth analysis, given that we face these unknowns and these limitations. One of the things that really struck me, and I think, Sue, sorry, I'm going to waffle now. I do apologise. Do I have to be within 3 minutes, or do I have to chair? Yeah, have I gone past 3 minutes again? The one thing that really did it for me is looking at range, and I didn't just look at the kind of vehicle that is normally used by other local authorities. I looked at the Mercedes and the Volvo, and there was another one which name escapes me. But generally, the range is under 100 miles. And as Sue said, we looked at Didcot, so round trip to Didcot would be 30 miles before any collections, and of course load and stopping and starting and winter and topography, all of these things just make it quite risky. Henley is probably, Henley and Tame are the two closest one, but even with Henley, that's 16 miles. Farringdon, then looking at the Vale towns, 60 miles there and back. 50 for Wantage and 40. So, and presumably it would have been kind of urban settings where we could have looked at using some EV vehicles. So I think it's really important to make that point that the technology, as much as we would like it to be, is not quite there in terms of being able to support rural settings, but particularly with where our new depot is going to be. That is a real limiting factor that we need to consider now and in subsequent rounds. So I believe that, again, I think we have limited choice, and of course this legal duty is weighing quite, and the timeline as well. We need these condemned vehicles off the road. So that's my 2P, and I will now go to Councillor. It was more than 2P, wasn't it? I will go to Councillor Rawlins, who is going to make me look much better.
That's a challenge of brevity. Well, as everyone said, scrutiny's role is extremely important, and it's entirely right for them to challenge these decisions on very big expenditures. We're on a journey with climate change, and we're trying to pursue the art of the possible. We have to replace these vehicles because of their age. We need to do that. We agreed to do it on a rolling programme. That's what's being done. And we have to look at the fuels. In my view, it's been perfectly clearly demonstrated that hydrogen is an incredibly embryonic possibility, and it's not remotely there on a commercial basis, especially if, unlike the folks in Glasgow, you don't have a wholesale supply of hydrogen. There are also other issues with hydrogen, and the Hindenburg probably indicates that there are natural challenges there to be managed. We're on a journey. The next logical step from diesel is HVO, is the hydro-treated vegetable oil fuels, and we can do that with the diesel engines. That is capable of going into diesel engines without any change of the engine. And so if we can find a good supply that is properly sourced for that oil fuel, then great. That's an option that we can do with this proposition. Then we can look at the electric RCVs, and we have to put that in our context, where we are rural, where we have a depot now coming at Great Hazley, and where honestly the demands on the vehicle, when there's cold weather, when there's up and down, are more challenging. So you can have a good day, and it's been suggested that on an ideal day you can probably just about get 100 miles out, but there are many other days when you just can't. And so we have a statutory obligation to collect the bins every day, and so that's what we must do with the electric vehicles. We face challenges over price, we face challenges over their range, and we face challenges over their weight carrying capacity. It's suggested in the report that the price might be 100% premium. We're spending 2 million, so that premium could be 2 million. It might be, I've seen some sources that suggest you maybe could work with a 50% premium, but even so, that's still a £1 million penalty on buying or replacing just a quarter of the fleet. And we're going to have to go on to the others. I don't think there's any practical way in which we could justify that immense price premium over our 120,000 households of South and Vale. It just doesn't stack up, not remotely. And as has been said, if you look at the range that you require to go out to Wantage and back again and do your round whilst you're there and have the power in the vehicle to do the bin lifts and everything else that has to happen, that's a lot, and it's not going to get back many times. So that's just not a viable proposition. And then it's hard to pin down exactly, but there is definitely a weight penalty as well. That just the batteries on these things weigh nearly 3 tons. That's a huge amount. A normal 26 tonner will have, a diesel 26 tonner will have a weight capacity of 12 tons. But you're dealing with some very heavy weights here, and it doesn't take much to potentially deplete that weight carrying capacity. So for me, we're in the right place with this recommendation. We're doing the electric vehicles where we can on the food waste ones. But at this top end, at the 26 ton end, we simply have to go with this recommendation at this time. And the whole point about the rolling programme of renewals that we set in train is when we can, we will. Right now, that proposition isn't there, and therefore we have to do what's proposed.
Thank you. I will go to Councillor Sophie Butcher-Sammer.
Thank you. Good points have been made around the table. I thank you for your contributions. One last thing to say, and really that's to ask for some help from scrutiny. And I wondered if scrutiny would like to look at the possibility of what we can do in the way of more comms and education on waste reduction, because the best thing we can do for carbon reduction at the moment is to collect less waste, but it won't be as heavy. So anything you can think of. I mean, we are pretty good, we're top at recycling, but actually what we need to do is overall waste reduction. So any help that anybody can give us on that, we'd be grateful to have it. Thank you. And so I propose the recommendations.
Thank you. Just to say they're quite long. Do you want me to read the recommendations? Are you happy and you have read them? Just to note that in the recommendations, it says the Cabinet recognises the role of scrutiny, and I just want to thank scrutiny once again. I know their questions were very searching. They were very well intentioned, and we genuinely appreciate it on process. I have to say that there will be some learnings, as Paul has mentioned, and we'll take those away for next time. Are you happy? Do I need to read out the recommendations for the benefit of the?
I think you should make the point about needs to be the same within Vale.
Okay,
and they are meeting tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So
the Cabinet recognises the role of Joint Scrutiny Committee in calling the original decision, and thanks the committee from meeting on the 1st of December 2025 to discuss the issue and making their recommendations for consideration. B, the Cabinet recognises that any decision on the purchase of waste vehicles needs to be aligned with that taken by the Vale. That Cabinet approves the award of a contract to Dennis Eagle via Crown Commercial Services Framework for 8 26-ton refuse collection vehicles and 1 18-ton narrow refuse collection vehicle. The estimated cost of the vehicles is 2.5 million, of which half will be funded by the council, and the remainder funded by the Vale of Whitehorse in accordance with the agreed cost sharing mechanism. And D, finally, Cabinet approves the movement of the required budget for vehicle purchases from the provisional capital programme to the approved capital programme. Everybody happy? Yes. For this recommendation? Thank you very much.
Yep, it's unanimous.
Unanimous. Thank you, Sophie. Right, so we're moving now swiftly to agenda item 9, which is budget monitoring, and to consider the report from the head of finance. And in the absence of Councillor Barker, who is normally the Cabinet Member for Finance, Councillor Tony Morgan has agreed to introduce the paper. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Chair. I will do my best to replace Peter Paul, but won't be anywhere near as good. This report reviews the Council's revenue and capital expenditure performance against budget during the 2025-26 financial year up until the end of month 6 in September. Cabinet will recall that the budget for the 25-26 year was agreed by Council at the meeting on the 13th of February 2025. The net revenue budget, as outlined in paragraph 4 of the report, was set at that time as £25.5 million. Since then, this has increased to £26.2 million. The increase reflecting the carry forward of unspent one-off project budgets from 24-25, the previous year. In terms of revenue, as explained in paragraph 5, table 1, the forecast is for an overspend on service expenditure of just over £1.1 million. However, investment income is expected to exceed budget by a figure of over £3.3 million, giving a total forecast revenue underspend of £2.2 million. Budget carry forwards are expected at year end, and these will be firmed up in the coming weeks. On capital, the budgeted approved programme at the end of September was, as shown in paragraph 17, just under £36.3 million, against which £7 million has been spent. As noted in the budget setting update report also being considered tonight, the capital programme continues to be reviewed and challenged, and hence I recommend that Cabinet notes this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. I will formally second that if that's okay. Yeah, the recommendation is that Cabinet notes the report. We've got Simon Hewings, who is our Head of Finance. I think we have him.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
we do. Yes, he's
Hi, Simon.
Hello, Simon. Do we have any questions either for Simon or I hope not for Tony? I think I'm feel really quick to do.
Oh, we've got some fellas.
But for Simon, do we have any questions at this stage? Or Simon, any comments from you? Anything to add? No?
No, nothing to add, Chair.
Thank you. Do we want to debate this or do we want to just note it?
Happy to note.
Happy to note?
note it.
Yeah, happy to
Yeah.
note. If you want to move on. Okay, I appreciate that.
Can we have a quick vote if that's okay? Just
Yeah.
get decision notice. Brilliant. Unanimous again, 6-4.
Okay, thank you, Simon. You're off the hook for this one. Agenda item 10, and I will introduce this one again in the absence of Councillor Barker, who would normally do the honours. So this report is to inform Cabinet on the progress made to date in preparing the revenue budget for the next financial year, which is 2026-2027. And the capital programme for 26-27 all the way to 2030-2031. The report, we've already had a report in October, which is the kind of scene setting report. Yes, so this is a kind of an update to that. One of the things to mention is that it must seem budget setting is quite a long process, but it is incredibly dynamic with a lot of moving aspects as government makes announcements, their policy statement, funding settlement, etc. So this really does take a huge amount of work by our officers, for which we are very, very grateful. As part of budget setting, one of the things that we do is the so-called budget challenge. There is an officer budget challenge and a councillor and a member, so portfolio holders budget challenge, and these have largely concluded. I think there's a couple of small things outstanding, but we are nearly there. The update that you see here does not is effectively the base budget position, which includes essential growth but no discretionary growth. So it doesn't have any increases that have been proposed by Cabinet, and these will come with the budget in February. In terms of government funding, and by the way, the report is fairly concise and really, really informative if you want to know about the Fair Funding Review, the new way that government will be funding local government. There's a lot of changes and so additional work for officers. But I have to say I am really proud looking at the report as well. The predictions, the very kind of the predictions made by our finance team have been really very much on the money. So that should give us some confidence. So in terms of government funding, then estimates have been made. So when the report was published, we had only the policy statement. We have had an update, and I will ask Simon to kind of comment on where we are on that and whether we are in any position to share anything. It has only been less than a day, I think. So I will leave that to him. So the report is based on the policy statement. What else do I need to tell you? I think one important aspect is that we have, well, our officers are proposing that we earmark 3 million for transition in light of local government reorganisation. Unfortunately, the local government reorganisation comes with a cost that we will have to meet, and so 3 million of reserves have been earmarked for that purpose, should it be needed. And again, these are at the stage of the report that you see. These are the various appendices. They're estimates rather than the final figures. So I think that's important to note. What else am I missing in terms of capital? Yes, the latest capital program has been subject to an officer budget challenge process, and member challenge is scheduled for Monday, just before Christmas. So we will be doing that then, and of course that will be shared in due course. Again, as with revenue, the member budget challenge will not have growth proposals at this stage and will be included later in the program. So I recommend that we note the report. This is another one which is for noting, but I will ask Simon to let us know if there is anything in addition to that since the report has been written, I guess.
Thank you. Yes, the settlement was published yesterday afternoon. I've had some opportunity to work through the numbers, and as you'll no doubt, if you subscribe to a number of the sort of providers of information on local government, there are plenty of emails and commentary on the settlement that's arrived since yesterday. I think there's probably two headlines to note at this stage. Firstly, compared to previous estimates, I think we will be better off in £200,000. So that's good news. The other key headline I think at this stage is, however, that Sam as suggested in the report is on the funding floor. So what that means is that in future, in 27-28 and 28-29, albeit with LGR, we don't expect to be here if the timetable goes to plan. As South Oxfordshire, we're not expecting to see funding increase in those years. Clearly, lots of our other costs and pressures will continue to increase over that period, and we may see, for example, interest income fall. Again, a timely comment for today with interest rates, base rate going down today. So I think the short run is good news. The longer run will take some time to figure out whilst we understand all the other pressures and bring together a medium-term financial plan for the final budget report in February.
Thank you very much for that. And Simon, a really quick question from me before we go. So yes, we effectively where we are looking at a balanced budget for South Oxfordshire District Council. So Simon is not really. Thank you very much. Right, we're into questions. Do you have any questions again for Simon, not me?
I was just going to note to Becky, I'm going to second.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Walton.
Thank you.
Sue, go back.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate you've only just had these figures, and you're obviously most interested in what Vale and South are going to be. Have you had any chance to look at the figures for anybody we might regroup with within LGR to see what difference theirs will be? I think it's a bit unreasonable to ask.
I have had a quick look, but you know, again, it's a completely different funding stream for unitaries and counties. So whilst I've looked at what the numbers look like and they've gone up, I can't tell you whether that's in line with their expectations, or you know, it is a pressure to them because it hasn't gone up by as much as they expected it to be. So I can't comment on that, but they've certainly, you know, gone up.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, for answering that question. Councillor Rowland.
I have 4 questions, I think. Firstly, can you say anything about what the impact of Fair Funding Review has been on us? Have you got any view as yet on what's going to happen with the business rates changes and review? Do you have any sense, and I appreciate this is early and you need to do some more work, but any sense about the value hit that we might have in the next couple of years from being on the floor? And finally, because it does kind of relate to us, how Vale fared in their settlement.
Okay, so I scribbled those down. I mean, the fair funding review impact, I think, was in line with what we expected. So, because I think it almost the first question and the third question are almost the same in the context of where are we on the floor. So, where are we on the floor? From memory, I think our top up to get us to the floor is about 100,000 in 26, 27, and I think that increases to 500,000 in 28, 29. So I think it's probably fair to say that we are we're not that far off the floor. There are other councils with much bigger numbers in that area. I might as well do the contrast with Vale at the moment. I mean, you may be aware that Vale was contacted in the summer to say it was potentially not going to be on that funding floor. It would get less money. As of the point that the policy statement was issued, it was told it was no longer on the floor, and actually on the no longer subject to the lower funding floor. And actually, as of the numbers provided yesterday, it is no longer even on the funding floor. So Vale's had quite a turnaround in the last 6 weeks. There are other councils that have gone the other way in the last 6 weeks. So I think it's a better place for Vale, although Vale's financial position does remain more challenging than South's. The business rate changes. I mean, we're expecting a full reset. However, the numbers that we're getting for as part of the settlement assume that the number we estimated at the start of 25-26 is part of that funding floor. Now, at that stage, we were seeing some growth at South above baseline. It's not a huge amount, but obviously that's fixed in for the duration now. But that becomes the new starting point. So for 6-7, we are going to estimate a very modest amount of growth, and we're going to probably do that for 7-8 or 8-9. However, we won't know until Capital Colleagues produce the first estimate of business rates for the next year, which they've got to do in January, having worked out what to do with all the reliefs and everything that have come through the settlement as well. We'll get some indication as to where we are against that baseline funding level. What the government have done in 6-7 is guaranteed that there is no safety net effectively. So whatever happens, you will get the baseline funding level. When you see that in the final report, they'll quote a baseline funding level for business rates. We will get that whatever. And obviously, if we do better than that, we get to keep more of that than we did under the old regime. Okay. If we're below that in 7-8 and 8-9, they're moving back to a safety net level. So by the time we get to 28-29, the old safety net of 92.5% comes back into being. Clearly, we hope that in the area we're in, we will expect to see modest growth. I would anticipate going forward.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I'm hoping that there's no further questions. No questions? Great. Are we all happy to note the report? Mia's seconded Tony's Mia's proposal. Tony's seconded.
Yep, so it's unanimous.
Unanimous, yes, yeah. Right. Okay. Back to the agenda then. We are now into car parking fees, and again it's Councillor Sue Cooper who has the floor.
Right, thank you. Background to this. This report is in line with our car park pricing policy, which requires Cabinet to review the car park fees each year, and the aim is for car park income to at least meet the cost of running car parks. So what are the main issues? All the reference numbers are wrong in here, but there's a table 1 on, it says on page 39, but I gather from Tony that's unlikely to be on
page 67.
Right, whatever. Anyway, that gives the figures that we're likely to be looking at over the next few years. This includes all the costs associated with providing the service, including the public toilets, which are next to car parks. The expenditures include staff costs, the contract with Sabre, repairs and maintenance, rates we pay on the land, and all the central and admin costs. All these costs are forecast to increase in the near future, and that's the most notable thing about this table, I think, the increase in admin costs because they've recalculated everything. And it's only fair that, you know, each section providing services should take its full amount of overheads. Table 2 includes for the cumulative surpluses. We've got rising costs each year. So currently the account would go into deficit in 28-29 if we don't do anything. There are a number of projects that may be funded from the surplus, and one example is to get new up-to-date car park machines, parking machines, and I'm sure most people would be very pleased to see those because we get quite a lot of complaints about non-working machines. So that's one thing we could do with, and one of our choices in that, I think it's in the top of my head, that will affect that cost of the machines. It depends what we want them to do. Officers have summarised all the options for Cabinet to consider. They're in tables that we'll go through in a moment. Briefly, option A is to charge an extra 50p or £1 for the first hour, but I think we haven't really got much of an opportunity for that at the moment, but we'll go through, as I say, in a minute. Option B could be to increase the fees by 10%. Or you could have both, but we're not going to do that. Option C will look at charging into the evening, but we'd have to consult on that.
We'll go through them, Sue. We'll go through them.
We'll go through them. Okay, so we'll skip that lot for the time being. I think the main thing is to go through the options.
Yeah.
The rest of the introduction is, well, tell us what I'm going to tell you in a minute anyway.
Right. That's okay. Thank you, Councillor Cooper. We have got Andrew Busby, who is Head of Service, and you've got quite a wordy title, I think, but it is Head of Service for Corporate Landlord. Development and Corporate Landlord. Andrew, would you like to comment at this stage? Anything further? We will go through the options. So we may
nothing further to add, Chair, to that introduction. Thank you very much to the councillor, and yeah, happy to take questions as members work through the options as Sue's alluded to. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That would be a really good idea. Just one very quick question from me. I thought we had replaced some of the machines. Have we not?
We've done yeah, certainly, Chair. So we've done a trial on the pay and display machines. They've not yet been replaced, but we've done a trial to find the suitability of one, which will be coming forward to you for a separate decision.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that clarification. Right. Shall we go through the options, Sue? So the first one, and I'll let Sue kind of talk us through them, is to introduce a fee for the first 1 hour.
If you go find table 3, wherever it might be, and say it's on page 41 on the edition I've got, but
page 69.
Page 69 on the later one. Right, good luck.
So this one is the way that there's some officer comments about benefits and drawbacks and legal implications and potential implementation, and of course change in the budget.
Yeah.
Sue, do you want to just introduce very briefly this one?
Well, I don't get the feeling that there's much of an appetite for doing anything with our 3 hour. It's very popular with not only the residents but also the retail units. What I would say is that we're quite unusual in offering that. So I think as soon as we know who we're likely to be paired with in LGR, we ought to have conversations with them, or officers should have conversations with them to see how we might converge in the fullness of time, but certainly not this year.
Thank you.
So I'm proposing that we don't have an increase in fee, but that we do ask our officers, once we know about LGR, to have conversations with their counterparts.
Thank you. Councillor Vaughan?
Yeah, I support Councillor Cooper's comments with regard to not progressing with this. 3 of the 4 district council district councils in Oxfordshire don't charge for the first hour. I mean, one of them doesn't charge at all,
Yeah.
but 3 and 4 don't charge. I know from my conversations with Didcot businesses about how delicately balanced their finances are. They're about to suffer business rate significant increases, many of them. So I think actually anything that potentially puts our town centres at risk by doing that should be resisted. So therefore, I support Councillor Cooper's proposal that we don't progress with option A.
Thank you very much. Let's vote on that. Quick, everybody in agreement?
Just to confirm, is that Tony Morgan as seconding?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
It's
brilliant.
seconding
So,
was.
so
I think
I'm
Becky, how would you like us to do this? Do we
not just propose the ones we wish to propose?
Oh, I think the options first and then have a proposal in second and
Yeah.
all of them.
That's what I would have thought. So we will vote just to make sure that Ian agreed, but we'll vote together on the whole paper. Yeah.
At the end as well.
Okay, moving on briefly,
Right.
this option B, which is increase all fees by either 5, 10, 15 or percent. Yeah.
Right, and I think in view of the cost of living crisis that we have at the moment, I'd like to propose that we go for 5%, which is sort of roughly inflationist, and not go for 10 or 15 at this stage. So, as I say, we'll go with that. We don't actually have to do any consultation on that, so it's easy to put in place as well.
Thank you. Quick comment from Councillor.
I would support that. I think it's entirely reasonable in the economic context. If I look at the table of forecasts we have, I think we're a little ahead on this year and we're likely come out with a better revenue on this year. And personally, I've got some questions about the jump in central and administrative costs by 450,000 in one leap. I question whether 500,000 is a correct allocation for an activity that has only an income of 1.5 million all told. And other direct costs of the order of 1 million. It just seems a bit high to me. So taking all those things together, I think a 5% increase is a perfectly sensible and reasonable one.
Thank you, Councillor Rollins.
Well, I'll just be quick on that because I know I've mentioned when speaking to cabinet members that I often sort of want to very quickly, but I often want to sort of speak for rural communities. But this is one of the aspects where I think this comes into the equation because I fully endorse encouraging more active travel and public transport and less use of cars. But I'm just highly conscious of how rural parts of our district are. And, there are long distances between villages and no shops or towns for many miles and unlit roads and no cycle paths. And many rural residents have no choice but to use a car. So I want to keep that, whilst encouraging other methods of transport, we need to keep that affordable and also, encouraging people to be able to use to get to shops and park for a reasonable cost. So that's why I would like to support the 5%, no more than a 5% rise.
Thank you very much. Are we all in agreement with that? Yeah. Right, that's option C then.
Well, as I say, we're not doing A plus B because we're not doing A anyway.
Yeah.
So the next page, change the charging period from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Change it to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I'm not very keen on this. It doesn't seem long since we moved it to 6 p.m. anyway. I don't think there's any great need for this. It's another thing that needs consultation, and there are other things I'd rather consult on than that, shall we say. I propose that we don't adopt C at all.
So it's a no for C. No. Brief comment from Councillor Rowland.
Just to say that during the day, where our aim is to have churn in the car park and support our retailers, in the evening we actually want people to stay for a while and support the nighttime economy, socialise and have a meal and do whatever. And so I think on that objective, this is the right thing to do.
Great. Are we all happy with that?
Very
happy with that. Excellent. On to D, introduce a fee in non-charging car parks in Benson, Chinner, Wicklow and Cullen.
Now, since I have Benson obviously in my ward, I know that people won't like it. And actually what I would propose at this stage is not to introduce a fee in these, but I would like our officers to write to those parishes and say that we're not going to increase it this year, but we ought to look ahead a bit more. And what would they think of the idea of us increasing it and putting the charge on in future? And what sort of conditions would they have? The car parks are all different. Benson, you used to be able to go and park there any time in there, but now with the increased housing we've got, and in my opinion, far too many people driving from the new estates into the car park, parking is not as easy as it used to be. So there is maybe a case for putting a charge on there, but they might want to say we should have a special rate for residents or things like that. Chinner is also, has a lot of development, and so theirs is quite heavily used. Wheatley is quite small anyway, and Culham's right out in the wilds, and hardly any people use it. It's an enormous car park, and I can't see us ever needing to charge for that, especially as it's flooded for quite a lot of the year. So they will all be different, but I do think we should write to the parishes and tell them that we're not doing it at the moment, but we don't rule it out forever. And what do they think? Just so that they have been warned.
Excellent. That's a good idea. And of course, we always have to, the cost there, we need to balance the cost of signage and enforcement and all of these other things. So yeah, perhaps for some it may make sense, but not for others financially.
I was just going to say, I think that's a fair consultation to consider, but you covered that, Maggie.
Yeah, thank you very much. So it's a no for D for the time being, but to write to parishes.
That's right.
Yeah. Councillor Rollins? Councillor Rollins? D, no? You
Yeah,
happy?
sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, I wasn't moved.
And to E, change car parks to pay on arrival and ticketless, paperless, rather than pay and display. Councillor.
Yeah, well, with my interest in waste management, I'm very keen on reducing paper use. And indeed, it all ends up as waste paper, those little tickets, and they're also quite good at producing litter. So I think this is a good idea. I mean, personally, I like to have a written thing to tell me when I'm meant to be back, but I shall have to learn to use my phone like the rest of the population. So I think it's, we just have to read the machine, and that will tell you when you're meant to be back. And certainly we've got to have a consultation on this anyway, but I think we should bite the nettle and do it now. And also it's a good idea to do it before we actually order the new machines. Although I've been assured by John Backley, who's been briefing me on this, that we can take the printers in and out of those machines. So if we wanted them to start with and then have them removed, we could actually have them removed and apparently get the money back, which sounds pretty good to me, although there obviously is a labour cost. So somebody will pay for something somewhere, I expect. Although,
Thank you, Sue. Let's move on. So saving of 8,000 on
It's worth having.
Yeah, it's really worth having. So everybody have to vote yes for this one. Okay, so we're on to F. And before we go into F and G, Sue, if we could just ask a question of Andrew Busby. I'm just interested to hear whether we've done any consultation with the respective towns on these, and yeah, what is the feeling on the ground on these two?
Certainly, yes. So the team have spoken to the town council at Tame, and would welcome the change. So it's something that we can follow up with. I haven't had a detailed discussions myself, but I'm ably joined here with John. John, do you want to come in just to clarify what was said?
Oh,
you can hear me? Thank you.
Yeah, officers have had a informal contact with the Tame Town Council because of the impact on potentially the impact on the county council or the Tame Town Council parking in the middle of the town, and the feedback that we've got informally was that they would support that change in Tame. Yes, we haven't had the same contact in Wallingford because the driver for the change in Wallingford is more from customers and more from users of the car park who have voiced their concern that in Castle Street and St George's Street at the moment there is just one tariff, and to provide a more variety of tariffs, they would support the change to have those 2 car parks in line with all the other car parks in Wallingford. Thank you.
Excellent. As these are the same recommendations, then should we take F and G at the same time? Are people comfortable with that? It sounds like officers have really done and are listening to residents on these two. Councillor Morgan?
I just have a question. The figure in there notes £2.20 for the 2 hours, but in option B we're going up to £2.30. Should that actually be in line with the increase in option B?
It will be when it's tidied up, because these will have to go to consultation anyway. But the town, well, certainly in Tame, town council are quite keen on it, and you can still park for any length of time you like. So we're not restricting anybody. We're just adding more options.
So it'll be in line with whatever the standard
fee is when we get to round to doing it. Yeah. And if you want to vote, I mean, do you want to vote on F?
Let's do
and G. Well, similarly, that will be open to consultation. As I say, I mentioned to some people anyway. I can remember when we made Castle Street into a long stay one, because you have to back straight out into a line of traffic to come out of there. So we wanted to reduce the amount of movement. But you know, if you choose your day right, and there isn't too much traffic coming in from the Shillingford direction, it's not a big problem. And apparently, we've been asked by people to have the ability to park for short terms there for people who are wanting to visit things in Wallingford that happen to be close to that car park, because it's actually quite close to the centre. And likewise, the St George's Road one is close to the museum, and you might not want to spend all day in the museum. It's well worth a visit, by the way, but you know, a couple of hours is probably more likely.
Thank you, Sue.
So I would propose both of those.
Right, let's vote on F and G together. Are we all happy with a yes on those? Are you okay, Becky? Yeah, you're managing. I've got notes here as well if you need them. So
yeah,
we're on to H.
Yes, this is my most difficult one. So I'll leave it to somebody else to propose. I can live with 40% as it is at the moment, or I could just about live with 50%. I mean, the reason for having these permits is obviously, it's aimed quite a lot at residents who haven't got the space to put cars beside their house, but they might have two. And what the local member and I are trying to get over as a message is that rather than having cars, why don't you have one car and then have a second one through a car? Yes, exactly. Through a car club. And we do need to try and encourage people to take these lower carbon alternatives. So that's one. The other people who like to have permits are those driving in from surrounding areas to work. And they're the ones I would like to try and persuade to use active travel more. Wallingford in particular, which is where the problem arises. I would say all the complaints we've had have been Wallingford, not from Tame and not from Henley. Anyway, Wallingford has probably the best served area in terms of buses of anywhere in our district, and it's also reasonably flat on a modest area roundabout. So cycling and walking is quite within most people's ranges. I mean, not everybody. I'm not talking about everybody every day. Unless somebody else can think of better ways of encouraging more active travel, as I say, I'd be happy to keep it with 40%, but other people, I think, may wish to increase the discount to 50%.
Yeah, I will propose a discount at 50%, but I actually do have a question. I think it's important to know that as we are increasing the fees by this 5%, of course, the permits will also go up. And so effectively, I think it's a gesture of goodwill for those residents whom we have heard it from, and I know officers have been in close communication. It's hopefully at least give them the kind of confidence that our officers and us are listening I totally understand, Councillor Cooper is a very avid cyclist and active travel advocate. So, I absolutely understand her position, but I think this 10% an increase of 10% of the discount is probably not it's not what is going to make people cycle. But anyway, that's just my personal view. One of the questions I had for either John or Andrew Busby is, isn't there a kind of a more resident specific scheme that we can think of? I mean, I'm not saying now, I think hopefully people will agree to go with the 50%, but in the future, is there something a little bit more, just recognizing that they're probably in a different position, or is it a little bit uncomfortable because I guess if you are parking because you work there, you might also be impacted. So I don't know whether it's something that exists or you've considered. I don't know.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we have had numerous conversations, John and I, about permits and reductions, and yes, certainly doing a scheme which is fair to all residents is a challenge. I think what's before you in option H is a very good option for you to consider. And John, I know you've had numerous obviously conversations with members of the public when they've asked you about the cost of permits, and it's coming up with that fair scheme for all across our district. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, John.
If I can just quickly, yeah, I've got some experience of residence permits, and what is difficult is that there are some residents that do have off-street parking and have driveways and can park their vehicles on their driveway, and then other blocks of flats that have communal parking, or other older Victorian houses that have to park on the street. So you have to, if you have a residence permit scheme, it's quite difficult to identify exactly who can apply for those residence permits. And then of course you have developments where blocks of flats could be built, and then you have to change perhaps who are the residents that are in the scheme or not in the scheme.
I see.
So it is quite tricky to manage a residence permit scheme. But it's not impossible, but it's something potentially that we could look at if that's something that the Cabinet wishes.
Thank you kindly, John. Any more questions on that?
There's a comment about removing hard price permits for EVs, and we haven't mentioned that bit yet.
Yes, good question. I think the steer was that we retain them for the time being because we are not quite there yet in encouraging people to use EVs, but it's something that we will look at, continue to monitor. I think is that right?
If that's what the Cabinet as a whole wish, I mean, I'd be prepared to remove that. But if, as I say,
join us online if you want to.
There's some cost estimates here for making these changes, driven off the 50, 60, 70%. But presumably they also factor in removing the half price permits for EVs in these numbers. I just wondered if we know what if we went for say 50%, but we didn't remove the half price permits for EVs, if we have a sense of what this number would become.
Yeah, John.
The number of permits sold for the half price at the moment, there's if you have a vehicle that can be driven purely on electricity, you can have a permit for half price. We only sold 11 of those permits last year, so the actual impact is pretty negligible.
Thank you, John. That's really helpful. I'd like to be noted that I have an electric vehicle, so I'm both and also just noting that for the purposes of this discussion. Okay, great. So Sue, I totally understand if you need to abstain from this decision, but the rest of us, are we happy to retain the EV discount and approve the additional 10% going to 50 for the
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. And then finally, Sue, over to you for I.
This is the provide delegated authority to the head of service to authorise parking permits for volunteers at reduced or no charge. This was agreed on a one-off basis last year. I think it started with Wallingford Accessible Boat Company, because their volunteer helmsmen and such like didn't want to have to pay for parking every time they took the boat out from Wallingford. I'm very happy for the officers to do this on an as and when basis. I don't think the amounts of money involved are very great at all, and it's really as a goodwill to encourage volunteers to help out with things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just to support that, quite often volunteers are the people carrying lots of stuff to and from that. So in actual fact, it's not the normal people going, it's lots of stuff to take there. So it seems entirely reasonable, but to support those clubs.
This does actually require a change to the constitution, but I've noticed to councillors in my note to you that there is a constitution review group meeting in January, so hopefully that can be dealt with quite swiftly. So we can get and do that. And I think it's next summer, certainly both will be. But if other people ask, we'll, Andrew will consider on an as and when basis. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. With all of this in mind, are you happy for me not to have to read the recommendations and agree? Was there anything, would you like me to read them?
I have tried to summarise them. I'm happy to read them out.
Yes, please, Becky, that would be awesome.
So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I've got that Cabinet agreed car parking fees for the financial year 2026 to 27 and agreed to implement option B to increase all fees by 5%. Option E to change car parks to pay on arrival and ticketless/paperless rather than pay and display. Option F to change Southern Road car park Tame from short stay to long stay. Option G to bring long stay car parks in Castle Street and St George's in line with other car parks in Wallingford. Option H to reduce the cost of permits by increasing the current reduction for permits from 40% to 50% and remove half price permits for EVs. And option I to provide delegate.
Not remove.
Retain. Yeah, no worries. Update that. Apologies, everyone. Thank you. No, thank you for the correction. And option I to provide delegated authority to the head of service to authorise parking permits for volunteers at reduced no charge. And also recommendation B and C as written in the report. I can read them out loud if you want as well, but if you're happy to take those read.
If you're happy to, let's vote now. Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Sorry, could I just ask, you did ask a question about whether you wanted officers to consider future resident permits. Are you leaving that for now, or was
we can take it as part of I'm sure councillor the councillor. It was just something to.
So there was one other thing that I wanted to add but was told it wasn't necessary, which following on from paragraph 8, which is other parking issues, I would like us to support the any legislation which will ban pavement parking, which I think is really bad from disabled access, certainly, and many other people find it irksome having their paths blocked by cars, and also to align the rules under which councils and private car park operators are obliged to work, because there are two different sets of regulations at the moment, and I don't think that's at all logical or fair. But I gather that we can do that anyway without needing a resolution here. So I just hope we will.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Noted. Thank you very much for that. Right, we are moving on to Councillor Simpson, I believe, who is going to talk us through 4 adoptions of conservation area boundary reviews and appraisal. Councillor Simpson.
Yes, and I'm going to start off thanking Samantha Allen, Sam Allen, his Senior Heritage Officer, because she has been sitting throughout this cabinet meeting after a long day of work. So thank you for attending, and she will be there to answer hopefully any detailed questions that I won't be able to answer, should you choose to ask them. So we're seeking the formal adoption of proposed boundary revisions and conservation area appraisal and management plan documents as SPDs. And the appraisal documents are a toolkit for the assessment of the significance of a designated conservation area to be used to inform decision-making and design proposals for development in and around conservation areas. So for each of the reports brought to Cabinet, that's 4 reports tonight, the recommendations are the same. So recommendation A is that the revised conservation area boundary is adopted as per the proposed revisions shown at Appendix 1. B, that the conservation area appraisal and management plan as amended following public consultation is adopted as a supplementary planning document, an SPD, as part of the development plan evidence and is a material planning consideration. And C, to delegate to the head of planning in consultation with the relevant Cabinet member to make minor changes, typographical corrections or non-material amendments to the relevant conservation area appraisals and management plan document prior to formal publication and statutory notification requirements. So now I'm going to go through the 4 different conservation area appraisals, and I'll start off with Goring. So the boundary review and appraisal process was initiated by the Goring Gap Local History Society. The proposed boundary revisions and the draft appraisal were reviewed by the heritage team, who were satisfied that the proposed changes met the tests for designation, and the proposals were put out for public consultation. So public consultation ran for 4 weeks from the 10th of September to the 8th of October, and in total 24 responses were received, all but 2 of these via the Join the Conversation online survey facility. Hard copies of the draft document and response forms were also provided at Goring Library. And overall, there was a support for the appraisal document and proposed changes. There were mixed responses, specifically in relation to the proposed extension to include a group of properties along Manor Road, following the receipt of some more detailed information about how these properties have changed in recent years and how the plots have been subdivided. The heritage team consider that the contribution they would make to the designated area is not as significant as previously thought. As such, we no longer propose to extend the boundary further along Manor Road. So the proposed boundary changes are as follows. The correction of the western boundary to follow the neighbouring district and administrative boundary at Streetley and West Berks. This corrects a historic mapping anomaly. The addition of the railway cottages to the east of Goring Station, and the removal of the modern developments at Sloane Close, Farm Road and Elmhurst Walk. Maggie, the chair, will know all these places because this is her ward, as she stated at the beginning of this. The changes to the draft appraisal document from the consultation version will be to update the consultation section, outlining the process that has been followed and the status of the document. The boundary review and character area sections will be revised to remove those areas no longer proposed for extension into the boundary. References to Hobbs Boat House will be updated to Saunders Boat House and reflect its recent Grade 2 listing, and a numbering error will be corrected where the paragraph and section numbers change midway through Section 6. Other than that, there are minor typos to correct with no other major changes needed to the document. So there are 3 options for Cabinet. And the first is to find that the Goring Conservation Area, as proposed to be extended, is of special architectural and historic interest and designate the whole area as a conservation area and adopt the accompanying appraisal. 2, to find that the Goring Conservation Area, as proposed to be extended, is not of special architectural and historic interest and not to extend the designated area, leaving the existing boundary as the designated conservation area. Or 3, to find that there's an area of special architectural and historic interest that extends beyond the existing boundary and that it should be different to that proposed, having identified and justified the difference to designate that area the conservation area. So no significant financial, legal, climate or equality impacts have been identified. The small number of additional properties to be added to the boundary may incur some additional work to the planning service, but the potential modest increase in work would be met by the planning fee and existing budgets. So finally, for Goring, officers are seeking the adoption, the appraisal as an SPD and adoption of the revised boundary in line with option 1 above, which supports recommendations at the beginning of this report. So I don't know how you want to do this. Becky, do you want us to vote now for Goring based on those?
Yeah. I think take them, take Goring first.
We need to do different agenda items.
I will just make a very quick a comment of thanks to Sam for being so collaborative with this process and agreeing to meet and listen to some residents that had some concerns. But also a huge thanks to the Growing Gap History Society. They have put in a lot of work and they have been waiting for quite a long time. So I don't know whether they would be at this listening to this meeting now or later on, but I just wanted to note my thanks for them and I'm happy to support.
Is that you seconding the Goring?
I will second the Goring, yeah.
Thank you.
I would also recommend the adoption. Number one.
All in favour?
So all in favour? Yeah.
Unanimous?
Unanimous. 1 and 4.
Yeah, let's go. It is a lengthy process, so I'll try and make it as interesting as possible. I think what's really interesting is the work that's gone into it actually, and the feedback that went into it through the consultations. So I will address that at the end again. So Preston Crowmarsh is next, and I'll start off here with them. So the boundary review and appraisal process was initiated actually by Benson Parish Council, who appointed a heritage consultant to produce a draft on their behalf. The proposed boundary revisions and the draft appraisal were reviewed by the heritage team, who were satisfied that the proposed changes met the tests for designation, and the proposals were put out for public consultation. The public consultation ran for 4 weeks from the 10th of September to the 8th of October, and in total 25 responses were received, all but 5 of these via the Join the Conversation online survey facility. Hard copies of the draft document and responses form were also provided at Benson Library. Overall, there was support for the appraisal document and the proposed changes. There were useful comments provided which clarified local information, such as the names of landowners, which have been incorporated into a revised appraisal document. The proposed boundary changes are as follows. The rationalisation of the boundary of numbers 75 and 77 Preston Crowmarsh to fall along the property boundaries with the PROW. I'm going to have to
public right advice.
you know what I'm like. The extension of the boundary south to include the properties along the west side of the road, through the village to include the land and buildings at Crowmarsh Battle Farm. The changes to the appraisal document from the consultation version will be to update the consultation section, outlining the process that has been followed and the status of the document. A mapping area which showed the view from Thames Path from private land rather than PROW will be corrected, and any references to Northwest AONB, actually National Landscape, which was revised to National Landscape after the draft was first produced, will also be updated. Other than that, there are minor typos to correct with no other major changes needed to the document. So there are 3 options for Cabinet. So first, to find that Preston Crowmarsh Conservation Area is proposed to be extended is of special architectural and historic interest, and designate the whole area as a conservation area and to adopt the accompanying appraisal. 2, to find that the Preston Crowmarsh Conservation Area as proposed to be extended is not of special architectural and historic interest, and not to extend the designated area, leaving the existing boundary as the designated conservation area. And thirdly, to find that there's an area of special architectural and historic interest that extends beyond the existing boundary, but that it should be different to that proposed, having identified and justified the difference to designate that area the conservation area. No significant financial, legal, climate or equality impacts have been identified. The small number of additional properties to be added to the boundary may incur some additional work to the planning service, but potential modest increase in work would be met by the planning fee and existing budgets. So officers are seeking the adoption of the appraisal as an SPD and adoption of the revised boundary in line with option 1 above, which supports recommendations at the beginning of this report. So for Preston Crowmarsh, I would propose that we go with option 1, officer recommendation.
And Councillor Cooper is probably wants to second it.
Yes, please. I'm really pleased to see this come forward. And again, thanks to all those involved, and including the quite a few corrections to the historical notes that were provided. But certainly the extension is well worthwhile. I don't know if any of you know Preston Crowmarsh. I would recommend a nice walk down there on a fine day. It's a very pretty hamlet, but the extra buildings on the southern end of the new area, it's a lovely quadrangle of old barns that have been made into really nice offices actually, with a wonderful view out there. So yes, very much in favour of this. So let's go ahead with it.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbon. Councillor Rowlands, did you have a comment? Oh no, you were voting. You were voting. Excellent. Can we adopt the recommendation? Yeah.
6-4 unanimous.
So what comes next?
Halfway there.
By Watlington Parish Council, who appointed a heritage consultant to produce the draft. The proposed boundary revisions and the draft proposal were reviewed by the heritage team, who were satisfied that the proposed changes met the test for designation, and the proposals were put out to public consultation. Public consultation ran for 4 weeks from the 10th September to the 8th of October, and in total 16 responses were received, all but 2 of these via the Join the Conversation online survey facility. Hard copies of the draft document and responses forms were also provided at Watlington Library. Overall, there was support for the appraisal document and proposed changes. There was concern that 2 cottages of 21 and 23 Brickwell Road were not well justified for inclusion, and although lying at the historic edge of the settlement, no longer have the same architectural interest as areas within the boundary. These are no longer proposed for inclusion in the boundary. So the proposed boundary changes are as follows. The addition of the remaining strip of land which surrounds the Gogs and extends from Brickwell Road to join the open space to the south of Brook Street. The changes to the appraisal document from the consultation version will be to update the consultation section, outlining the process that has been followed and the status of the document. The boundary review and character area sections will be revised to remove those areas no longer proposed for extension into the boundary. Other than that, there are minor typos to correct with no other major changes needed to the document. So there are 3 options for Cabinet. Firstly, to find that Watlington Conservation Area as proposed to be extended is of special architectural and historic interest and designate the whole area as a conservation area and adopt the accompanying appraisal. Secondly, to find that Watlington Conservation Area as proposed to be extended is not of special architectural and historic interest, not to extend the designated area, leaving the existing boundary as the designated conservation area. And the third option would be to find that there's an area of special architectural and historic interest that extends beyond the existing boundary, but that it should be different to that proposed, having identified and justified the difference to designate that area the conservation area. No significant financial, legal, climate or equality impacts have been identified. The small number of additional properties to be added to the boundary may incur some additional work to the planning service, but the potential modest increase in work would be met by the planning fee and existing budgets. So officers are seeking the adoption of the appraisal as an SPD and the adoption of the revised boundary in line with option 1 above, which supports the recommendations at the beginning of this report. So I propose option 1.
Could I second?
Oh, right. Of course you live near. I was going to say.
Councillor Harris,
Sorry, I just wanted a second because although it's not my ward, it's just 2 miles away, so it's very, very local to me and I know the area very well. So I don't have a great deal to say about it really. I just wanted to put my support behind it and to thank officers for their work and to residents and the parish council for responding to the consultation.
Excellent, thank you. Can we adopt the recommendation? Yeah. Thank you very much.
So finally, we've got Whitchurch. The boundary review and appraisal process was initiated by Whitchurch Parish Council, who appointed a heritage consultant to produce the draft document. The proposed boundary revisions and the draft appraisal were reviewed by the heritage team, who are satisfied that the proposed changes met the test for designation based on the information provided, and the proposals were put out for public consultation. And public consultation ran for 4 weeks from the 10th September to the 8th of October. Was a busy time, wasn't it? In total, 19 responses were received, all but 2 of these via the Join the Conversation online survey facility. Hard copies of the draft document and response forms were also provided at Whitchurch Memorial Hall and in the church. Overall, there was support for the appraisal document and proposed changes. There were mixed responses, specifically in relation to the addition of the line of trees along Hardwick Road. The residents impacted were concerned that designation would make it harder for them to care for the trees, but other residents of the village were very keen to see them protected for their contribution to the rural character of the village. Overall, no comments were raised, and the disputed heritage significance of the trees, and it is considered they still warrant inclusion. The appraisal document will be updated to provide more detail about how consent can be obtained for works to trees and why this is important. The proposed boundary changes are as follows: the addition of the land on the Hardwick Road east of the existing boundary to include the historic avenue of trees, the removal of modern dwellings at Old Gardens on the southern side of Manor Road, and the corrections to the boundary in 3 places at Eastfield House, Luton and Chiltern Edge. The changes to the appraisal document from the consultation decision will be to update the consultation section outlining the process that has been followed and the status of the document. The boundary review and character area sections will include details of how to apply for tree works. And other than that, there are minor typos to correct with no other major changes needed to the document. So there are 3 options for Cabinet. Guess what they are? First, to find that Whitchurch Conservation Area is proposed to be extended is of special architectural and historic interest, and designate the whole area as a conservation area and adopt the accompanying appraisal. 2, to find that Whitchurch Conservation Area is proposed to be extended is not of special architectural and historic interest, and not to extend the designated area, leaving the existing boundary as the designated conservation area. And 3, to find that there's an area of special architectural and historic interest that extends beyond the existing boundary, but that it should be different to that proposed, having identified and justified the difference to designate the area the conservation area. No significant financial, legal, climate or equality impacts have been identified. The small number of additional properties to be added to the boundary may incur some additional work to the planning service, but the potential modest increase in work would be met by the planning fee and existing budgets. Officers are seeking the adoption of the appraisal as an SPD, and adoption of the revised boundary in line with option 1 above, which supports the recommendations at the beginning of this report. And I propose that we go with officers' recommendation, option 1.
I will second. It's in my county division, actually. So, you know, trying to, so yeah, happy to just 1 more second.
Lovely. So I just want to also once again say thank you to the Heritage team, and actually thank you to the parish councils and the Historical Society that it puts all the work into bringing these forward as well.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah.
Oh, did you? I was just going to add my thanks. I find these reports really interesting, and I'm very pleased that this council does as many as it does, and would even encourage them to come and have a look at you, Elm, sometime, please. And there is no paper edition of it available. Apparently, it got burnt in the big fire, and so nobody's been able to find the text of the existing conservation area. So updating it would be a good way of, recording what it should be.
Point well made. Thank you very much, Sue. And this brings us to the end of the meeting. I would like to thank everybody and wish them a very happy and very restful Christmas and New Year.
Can we
close the meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, 30. Please, can you finish the broadcast, please?
Right.
Becky needs a break as well.
I think Sue had a question.
I just wondered.
Wait, the dates.
Wait.
Yes.
Okay.
No, Bertie, are we no longer live? Oh, can you hear me, Bertie? I can.
You just want to exit.